Imagine you're standing at a grill with a fresh cut of meat in your hand. It looks normal, it smells normal. You've done this 1,000 times without thinking twice. Now here's a question that sounds almost too simple. Why is that meat from a cow and not from a lion, not from a wolf, not from a shark? You hunt, you eat meat. Humans have always done both. But something in you stops hard the second the animal in question is a predator instead of prey, and you've probably never once asked why. Stick with this to the end because the last part isn't really about predators at all. It's about you and what's actually running the decisions you think you're making on your own. Could you technically eat a lion? Yes. It wouldn't kill you outright the way a poisonous mushroom would. Some cultures have eaten lion, some have eaten wolf, bear, shark. The option exists. Almost nobody builds a diet around it. That's not an accident, and the first reason comes down to simple math, the same math any hunter still runs today without ever writing it down. Ecologists have a rough rule for how energy moves through a food chain. It's not an exact law, more a pattern that holds up again and again. Every time energy climbs one step up, most of it disappears, burned off as heat, spent moving, lost to digestion. A field of grass feeds a deer. The deer only keeps a fraction of that energy. A lion eats the deer, same tax again. By the time you're eating something at the actual top of a food chain, you're eating leftovers of leftovers. A lion needs 15 to 20 pounds of meat a day just to stay alive. That's a brutal, continuous cost. Paid in prey animals burn down to almost nothing just to keep one predator running. Now put yourself in an ancient hunter's position. Risk everything fighting a lion for 15 pounds of low-yield meat, or take the deer directly and skip the most dangerous, least efficient step in the whole chain. The math was never close. You go for the prey every time it actually mattered, but energy was only half the calculation. The other half is about what's built into a predator's body after a lifetime of being one. Predators eat raw flesh constantly, which means their tissue carries something a deer's never will. Parasites evolved specifically to survive inside exactly that kind of body. The most notorious is trichinella, a parasite that lives in carnivore muscle. Eaten undercooked, it hatches inside a human intestine and migrates straight into human muscle tissue. Severe swelling, high fever, historically, sometimes fatal. Bear meat is one of the most documented sources of trichinella on Earth, and bear is one of the only large predator meats humans have actually eaten with any regularity throughout history. Every culture that ate it learned the same lesson the hard way. Cook it all the way through or pay for it. There's a second layer stacked on top of that, and modern research shows exactly how brutal it can get. Toxins and heavy metals that enter an ecosystem don't stay at the bottom. A small fish absorbs a trace with every meal. A bigger fish eats thousands of those small fish, and the dose concentrates. A predator fish eats thousands of the medium ones, and it concentrates again. In 1966, a scientist named Charles Worster documented what that does at the extreme end, studying eagles dying along the Great Lakes. The eagles weren't poisoned directly, they were eating fish, and those fish had absorbed DDT through every link of the chain beneath them for years. By the time it reached the eagles, the concentration was so extreme their eggshells were cracking under the ordinary weight of a parent sitting on the nest. You've felt a mild version of this warning yourself. You've probably been told to limit tuna, not because tuna is dangerous, but because it's a large predatory fish sitting high enough on its own chain that the accumulation is worth tracking. The exact numbers looked different before industrial chemicals existed, but the underlying math didn't. Anything that spends years eating other predators is eating everything those predators already accumulated, one meal compounding on the last. So the chemistry says caution, the biology says real risk. But here's the part that should actually surprise you because it's older than any of that, and it was running inside you before you understood a single word of the science behind it. Psychologist Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania has spent decades studying disgust. His research found something remarkable. Humans carry an instinctive aversion to eating carnivores that shows up before it could plausibly be taught, and it appears independently across cultures with zero historical contact with each other. No shared language, no shared text, no way to have coordinated the reaction. Rosin's work argues this sits below rational thought, closer to a reflex than a conclusion you'd reason your way to consciously. The logic underneath it is simple once you see it laid out. Ancestors who felt nothing about eating predator meat sometimes paid for it, through infection, parasites, a bad gamble that didn't pay off. Ancestors who felt an unexplainable resistance, repulsed without knowing exactly why, avoided that risk more often without ever needing to understand the reason. And they passed that same feeling straight down to you. No instructions required. Picture eating a wolf steak right now, in detail. Something in you reacts before your brain even finishes the thought. That's not table manners. That's an old warning system, still running exactly as designed. But there's a piece of this that gets left out of the tidy version, and it might actually be the bigger reason. A predator isn't just risky to eat. It's brutal to even try hunting in the first place. A deer runs, a wolf fights back, with teeth built for exactly this, reading your movement the way you'd read its. Ancient humans had no hospitals, no antibiotics, nobody stitching you up behind the next tree. A deep bite that got infected could end a hunter's ability to work for weeks. A group that couldn't afford to lose its strongest hunter to a fight over quick, low-yield meat wasn't going to pick that fight when a herd of easier calories was standing in the open half a mile away. You don't beat the most dangerous animal on the field for bragging rights. You go around it straight for the thing it was already hunting. Not every predator stayed off the table, and the exceptions prove the same rule instead of breaking it. Squid and octopus, both efficient hunters, trigger none of that resistance. Some cultures eat shark and alligator without hesitation. The common thread is position. These animals sit low enough on their own food chains, or get taken young enough, or get eaten rarely enough that the accumulated risk never reaches the level a decades-old apex predators does. The rule was never no predator ever. It's that the higher up the chain and the longer that animal lived stacking risk on top of risk, the worse the trade gets, in every direction at once, from calories to combat to whatever's sitting in its tissue by the time you catch it. And the pig proves the same math instead of breaking it. Pigs are omnivores, not obligate hunters. Left alone, they'll eat meat, carrion, whatever's convenient, technically making them opportunistic predators some of the time. And yet pork is one of the most widely eaten meats on the planet, with none of the resistance a wolf steak triggers. The reason isn't a loophole. A pig's actual diet, averaged across its life, stays overwhelmingly plant-based. It never spends its life at the top of the chain the way something built entirely around hunting does. It was never dangerous to catch, either, once it stopped being wild. Being capable of eating meat was never the disqualifying factor. Living permanently near the top, fighting for every meal, was. Eventually, culture caught up with all of it and wrote it down as formal law. Jewish dietary law prohibits eating predatory animals outright. Islamic dietary law draws almost the identical line, barring animals that hunt with fangs or talons. Neither tradition needed to understand parasites, toxin loads, or the math of a food chain. Instinct and hard-earned experience had already been enforcing the same rule for tens of thousands of years. The text didn't invent it, it just gave the old, wordless feeling a name. So go back to that grill, the cut of meat in your hand. Cow instead of lion, exactly the way it's always been, without you ever really asking why. Every animal you've ever eaten was cheaper to catch, safer to fight, and lighter on whatever might be sitting in its tissue than the thing it used to run from. None of that happened by accident, and none of it was a decision anyone consciously made. It was thousands of generations of hunters running the same brutal risk-reward math, one hunt at a time, until the only instinct left standing was the one that kept your ancestors alive long enough to become you. You didn't choose your dinner tonight. Every hunter before you chose it, one hard lesson at a time, and you're eating it because it worked.